Hello, my name is Megan Lester, and I chose the topic of gun control, specifically gun control and its relation to mental health in the United States. In the United States, some statistics show that the percentage of households with guns is between 36 to 49%. That's almost half of the households in America. And the percentage of adults owning guns is 23 to 36%, which is a lot less than half. The demographics of gun ownership in the United States is male gun owners is 45%, female is only 15%, surprisingly. White Americans is 33%. Non-white Americans is 10% less, coming in at 22%. Republican, 38%, which is a little surprising. I figured that number would be substantially higher. Independent parties are 31%, and Democrats are 22%, which I thought that number would be lower as well. And while we're looking at the demographics, I want to point out how low the female percentage is. It comes in at only 15%, and I thought that was very interesting considering how much females are sort of victimized in America. I know there's many women's power movements and all this stuff, but, obviously there's some kind of idea that women are the weaker sex and that women are the victims, and I figured that with that in mind that women would carry and own firearms more than 15%. I thought that number would be well up into the 30s. So that might play into the mental health of the United States as well. Not necessarily mental health, but this idea in people's minds that women are weaker, and maybe women themselves have this idea throughout their life that they're not manly enough to own a gun, if that makes sense, or that there's other ways for them to protect themselves, maybe relying on other people like 911, police officers, a man in their life, something to that effect. Not necessarily all women, but maybe just this standard idea, and that's what attributes to that number of women carrying or owning guns being so low. Personally, I'm a mother of 2, and I own 6 guns between my husband and I, but I carry a pistol everywhere I go because I'm out with my 2 young children by myself most of the time, where my husband works second shift, and I want to be able to protect myself and protect my children against anything that may happen. So I think that if there is this stigma that women don't need to own guns or shouldn't own guns, that we need to work on that in the United States as well, to show that women are just as empowered to be able to carry their own weapon and be able to protect themselves and protect their family. And a poll was taken, and it showed the reason for owning weapons in the United States, and hunting come in at the top at 60%, protection came in at 36%, and recreational and target shooting came in at 21%. Now, I'm not sure exactly where these studies were taken, but looking at the United States as a whole, I would have assumed that protection would have come in as the number one reason for owning guns. When you look at places like Chicago or, another city that is perpetually ridden with gun violence and gun crime, I figured that the reason for owning would come in at protection would be higher, because people felt like they needed to carry weapons to protect themselves if something was to happen. Now, hunting, I know that hunting is big on, especially here in Virginia where I live. I know that hunting is a big reason for gun ownership. And I'm sure that places that still rely on hunting and places that hunting is recreational, maybe like Colorado or other places, not here locally. I just didn't expect that the percentage of ownership for hunting would be so high throughout the United States. Now, when it comes to mental health in the United States, every year 42.5 million Americans, and that's 18.2% of the total adult population. This is not all the population, including children and infants. This is all the adult populations. 18.2% of the adult population suffer from some form of mental illness. Now, it listed anywhere from schizophrenia to depression to bipolar to anywhere just from basically anxiety. All of that is classified as mental health, and 42.5 million Americans, 18.2%, suffer from some form. It doesn't necessarily have to be a debilitating form of mental illness. It can be anywhere, like I said, from just social anxiety. When it comes to gun violence as a result of mentally ill people purchasing or owning guns or being able to get their hands on guns, there's no clear answer to the end of gun violence. The conversation does begin when Americans question the relation of mental health to gun ownership. When weapons are acquired legally, they have to go through an arms dealer, and they do background checks, and that's it. Your background check does not cover an extensive form of mental health evaluation. If you have been hospitalized in a mental facility and you have been diagnosed with some form of mental illness, that usually results from, for example, someone committing a crime, committing a felony, and then they go to court and are charged with that felony, but it comes out that the reason they committed that felony was some form of mental illness like schizophrenia. Then that is when it is documented, and that is when it shows up on a background check. And that's something that would disqualify someone from purchasing a firearm legally. However, if someone is severely depressed or severely suicidal and they go in to purchase a firearm to commit suicide, then and they have not committed any crimes in their past and they have nothing that shows up on their background check, then there is no reason that they're not going to get that firearm and take it home and commit suicide. Now, I know there are many arguments regarding how mental health evaluations would be made legal and would still ensure people their Second Amendment rights. And there's a lot of arguments from both sides. There's a lot of arguments that question whether the laws regulate gun ownership and the mentally ill individual, whether denying someone a weapon based on their depression and their suicidal tendencies is infringing on their Second Amendment rights to own weapons. So whatever stance you take on this debate, it's your job to start the discussion.